मन्त्रमूलं गुरोर्वाक्यम् मोक्षमूलं गुरुर्कृपा ॐ श्री गुरवे नमः।
Srimati Gayatri Devi ji in the chair, learned audience. In fact, I did not want to take the stage at any time during these sessions. I thought I would be only organizing it so that audiences here would have the benefit of listening to highly learned scholars from abroad and also from various regions of our country. The question is dominant in everybody's mind. What is our future? Rather than listening to the same old local voice, it is appropriate that they would wait to listen to scholars from outside, to meet whom the opportunity is not ordinarily available. We have had very scholarly expositions from very highly learned scholars who studied many aspects of the destiny of mankind, besides dealing with what is known as horoscopy, the destiny of the individual. David Frawley is a multifaceted personality. I have had the great pleasure of meeting him more than 1.5 decades ago. We have been thinking together, not talking much. When I had published my work on Katha Upanishad, calling it Katha Yoga, I depended on 3 individualities, 3 great persons. There is Sringeri Swamiji for his blessings. I told him very clearly, sir, if you think it is worth publishing, kindly say so. If it is not so, kindly tell me. As a disciple, as a Jagat Guru. He told me 4 months later. I delayed my reply because I read it 4 times again and again. Then a great Sanskrit scholar, Pulala Sri Ramchandrudu, who is well versed in various aspects of the philosophy and all the darshanas, he was second man. The third person was Dr. David Frawley. I would like to. That is how we came closer than before in our meetings. This conference has come to take place today here due to the efforts of one individual, that is James Gallagher. Almost like a one-man army, he coordinated the whole thing from various regions of our country and also from other countries like Germany. UK, US, in fact the entire range of the astrological community is so well known only to him, as far as I know. It is on his advice they are able to come. So I am beholden to him. In fact, this conference has not been organized by me on my own, but it is occasioned, I have already explained, because of the great amount of literature that has come to be published in the last 10 years or even more, almost creating a mass hysteria in some circles and some countries about the very security and very possibility of our existence after 2012. There are many, these are not predictions of some astrologers, there are prophecies. Prophecy is not a prediction, it is intuition of somebody. Mayan civilization has predicted and prophesied also. Long, long ago, the large continent of Atlantis went underground, was dissolved in the vast ocean. And the first incident where we can notice a prediction is in this context. 2 centuries before the great Holocaust of losing their continent, the local astrologers, who were astronomers also in the Mayan civilization, had told the ruling family that 200 years from today, our continent is going to sink into the ocean. Try to do what you can. They started manufacturing ships to escape from a sinking continent and to find a safer place where they could migrate in a large mass. Yes, even at that time there was agnosticism. One of the ruling members of that dynasty, which was very popular, said, "What nonsense this is. How can somebody look into the future and say that the continent is going to sink? I don't take it." He opposed. And yet, something like about 2,000 boats are constructed in 2 generations of the ruling family. Like Noah's Ark and things like that, you know the stories. They escaped, landed on the northernmost regions of Egypt. Egypt grew into a great civilization, culminating in the great pyramidal knowledge. It was not merely a structure, every pyramid represented a great insight into the astronomy of the cosmos, not merely the study of the solar system. Knowledge of the cosmos is million times wider than our solar system. Solar system is just a minor part of the cosmos. So there was an insight into the future long, long ago, and to give it a kind of timing, the scholars have arrived at about 12,500 years before Christ that this could have happened. And then the Egyptian civilization continued. They realized that future is predictable, knowable, so that we can be prepared for it, either to protect ourselves or to submit to the forces of nature willingly, not crying, not complaining. The inevitable has to be taken with a sense of wisdom rather than with a sense of opposition. The individual is a trifle. He is not capable of facing his own destiny. The basic law involved in this is there is a destiny. Destiny is not an accidental series of happenings. It is preordained. There is a cause and effect. What has to happen? The seed for it is already there in the past, and that cause is giving the effect. Whether it is in the case of a nation or an individual, or is in the case of a whole culture or religion that you may call. This has been experienced by us over the last several millennia. And the basic outlook on life of the Hindu or the Bharatiya is the future is in our hands, because future is a result of my actions. I can decide what kind of a future I would like to have by deciding what to do now. So it's a case of a wise advice given to the man so that he can frame his future. A horoscope of an individual is nothing but the essential message contained in 12 signs and 9 planets, indicating what he had done in the past and what exactly is going to happen as a result of it. So that is a kind of unveiling the past so that he can read his future. Everything is in a sequential form happening, which is why this law is governing the entire creation. Therefore, it is known as universe, one version all over. There is no difference between Swarga or Brahmaloka or earth. Everything is the result of somebody's karma in the past. They have been built up. And now we have what is known as the Brahmanda. We have a knowledge of galaxies. We do not know whether the galaxy is the same as Brahmanda. According to the Vishnu Purana and other Puranas, including Matsya Purana, Brahmanda has been clearly defined as consisting of 14 regions in the space in an ellipsoidal volume of space. All the 14 regions are interconnected by one universal force. All the lokas are governing the life together. All the 14 lokas put together are governing life. And also, the difference between the one loka and the other is the level of intelligence, level of wisdom, level of knowledge. That decides the higher or lower. In the midst of this volume, there is a small solar system going round some axis of this Brahmanda, close to the axis, not far away. And Earth is part of that solar system. Sun is up. We are told by the scientists, Sun is traveling with his family at a speed of about 49.2 miles per second. We don't feel that there is any motion at all. Earth is going around the sun, and the solar system is proceeding in the space with this enormous speed, because the solar system is again contained in a volume, a kind of a sealed, hermetically sealed like volume, which is not affected by the outside forces. System is totally protected with all its planetary membership. It is traveling. Because the enormous space through which the solar system is traveling, entire space of its route is not uniform. It contains different forces, different contents, different natures of forces. Solar system is traveling, but it is not just empty space. According to the predictions of the scientists today, or they don't predict, they are projecting. That's why I call it projections. Scientists project the future. Astrologer predicts. The prophet gives a prophecy. But all these communities are telling about our future. And now it is solar system is just now entering into that part of the space which is thickly occupied by highly charged particles of innumerable dimensions in volume totally, and there is going to be an impact on the enclosure of the solar system, because the outer space which is enclosing the solar system is subject to pressures. It is releasing certain dangerous waves directed inside. So the solar system is likely to be affected in some way. We don't know exactly what it is, but it is not a desirable thing. It's not going to be a happy thing. And the big question is, when is the solar system's pradakshina or circumambulation around the axis? What is its periodicity? With what result is this periodicity to be experienced? How many circumambulations is it going to make? Does it mean anything to the earthlings, to the mankind? There are many basic questions. Perhaps Puranas throw more light than the modern knowledge of astronomy. There is what is known as evolution. This evolution has started long, long ago in the higher worlds themselves, Brahmaloka, Swargaloka, and down to the earth, with the Juloka and the intermediate region occupied by beings with different levels of intelligence. So, there was a time when this earth was totally occupied by wild nature, ranges of mountains, rivers, valleys, and dangerous wildlife. Dangerous with reference to the mankind. We call it an animal dangerous. We are speaking from the point of the man. It is not dangerous to itself, it is part of creation. That way, it was found long, long before the Ramayana times. Wisdom, I believe, it is my own imagination or my understanding, you can take it anyway. The necessity to understand all about this creation was realized. It is necessary to understand what is this Brahmanda, what is this earth, what is this solar system, why is it working this way, why are we here, who am I? These are the basic questions to be investigated, not by instruments, not by looking out into the space, but by looking into oneself. Just because whatever is contained in the universe is contained in the man, which is why the human body is known as Kshudra Brahmanda, a miniature Brahmanda. All the lokas are within. You can visit Brahmaloka, you can visit Svargaloka, or you can visit the nether worlds below us. Because earth is not Bhumi, it is Bhuloka. Just like Chandra Mandala is different from Chandra. The body of moon is one thing. The loka of the moon is different. It is Pitruloka. There are souls without body there, waiting for their chance to be born on the earth again. So, the rishis had the knowledge of the technique of looking once inside. That is exactly where Vedas have descended to the earth. Let us remember there are Vedas only on the earth, not in Svargaloka, not even in Gandharvaloka, not even in Vidyadharaloka. Vedas have come, are unveiled only on the earth for the benefit of the mankind, obviously. And they could understand the various forces that govern this Brahmanda. What are the levels of this wisdom in various lokas? How to interpret this higher wisdom? What to tell the man about his purpose of living? How to make the man understand the reason for his birth? What is his future and past? So the entire wisdom of the creation, the intention behind the creation, what are the intentions of the Creator, what are the man's responsibilities unto himself rather than to anybody else. Fundamental responsibility of every individual is directed to himself. So he has to take the help of the Vedic message and take care of himself, so that if ever he is able to understand something about it, he can help his neighbor, his friend, his servant, member of his family. So the whole knowledge descended to the earth, unveiled on the earth, by looking up into the space and looking to the higher worlds of wisdom. So there was a time when this knowledge was revealed, long before Ramayana times. If you can examine the Puranas, you will find there is what was known as a Vedic age, no doubt. Normally I don't agree with this term. This is Vedic age. Future is also Vedic age, as long as they are remembered. As long as there are at least 10 people are giving their respectful attitude to the Vedas, is a Vedic age. But the time of revealing was before the Ramayana times, perhaps up to Ramayana times, and a little after that. By the time we arrived in the Mahabharata times, you will find the Vedarshis did not exist anymore in large numbers. Parashara and Vedavyasa were down the generations from the Vedic Rishis. There was a long gap of time. What the great Rishi Parashara and Vedavyasa did was Vedas, Anantavai Veda, unlimited size, unlimited content. Unless they are all brought together between two covers and defined that this is the beginning, this is the end of the Vedas that are available today, study this as a course, because you are not capable of revealing the secrets. You are not able, you have no access to the higher words and knowledge like before, like our ancestors. All that you can do is only to take care of the texts available. He was a great editor and preserver of Vedas. So he is called Vedavyasa. By the time Mahabharata was fought on the battle, there was a need which had already arisen to preserve the Vedic texts with all the names of the rishis who had brought the Vedic knowledge down. For example, in Rig Veda itself, there are as many as 402 rishis who are responsible for various suktas. What they did was only tapas. Now, what is this tapas? Tapas is nothing but to be able to dwell on the question without committing the mistake of trying to answer it. Any attempt to answer it is, man is bound to commit a mistake. That is why that was called Maunam. Maunam does not mean not talking, but not thinking. That is a true Maunam. It's only then the presence of the Creator inside the man, because the man's body itself is Kshutra Brahmanda, the presence of the Lord, the Creator, is there inside. His message can be understood if I am able to keep my silence. This was tapas at that time. So far as the methodology of the tapas, the various parts of the discipline called tapas are all not known, which is why much later we have been given the Yoga Shastra. Yoga Shastra is a new textbook on the ancient system of tapas. It was called tapas, today it's called yoga. But to achieve the ability to listen to the inner voice is an advanced stage of yoga. Before that, there are many milestones. There are some obstacles to achieve the ultimate knowledge. So, I don't want to digress too much on this, but briefly, the first stage in yoga is moral siddhi. The siddhi of the attainment of complete, total, transparent, pure morality. Naitika siddhi. Not even thought should contain any immoral element in it. That is Naitika siddhi. That's the basic thing. A stage is reached, even in his dream, nothing immoral can ever touch his mind or subconscious level also. That is first stage. Second stage is Shariraka Suddhi, Indriya Suddhi. Along with that, the third Siddhi is Manas Siddhi. The mind is at his beck and call. The Indriyas are controlled by him. They don't control him. Mind cannot disturb him. Mind can be ordered to work or not to work by the individual. So this is Shariraka Siddhi and Manas Siddhi. Then the tapas continues. Call it yoga or whatever. It continues. One day the truth is revealed. After the truth is revealed inside, at the subconscious level, without being conscious of what he is seeing, that is subconscious level, he doesn't exist in his body as an individual during the experience, like in a dream. A man does not know that he is dreaming while dreaming. He wakes up to tell others that he had a dream. Even the divine experience is like that. As you call it divine experience, the divine experience of the truth and things like that. It was then that the future and the past, not of himself, of the entire cosmos, of the solar system, the future and past of the earth, why and how, why of it, all these things are revealed to the man inside. But does it mean that none of us who are capable of doing that can ever hope to know anything about it? It does not mean that. We have laid out pathways before us, we can proceed on that. And exactly here, the science of astrology comes into the picture. Why are these planets doing all this? Why should there be a malefic planet and benefic planet? Are they yielding any kind of results on their own, by their own choice? Or are they ordained to do this? If so, by whom? But what is the reason behind it? What is the logic behind it? If the planets are parts of the governor of destiny, the divinity, why are they giving different results? Shani is Yogakaraka in horoscope, is the destroyer in another. Their behavior is not uniform because they give the results of different activities of these different souls. But all these results of the planetary forces on the individual or on the total human community as a whole is nothing but the process of cleansing. The greatest cleanser is Saturn or Rahu in the house or Ketu in the 7th house, you call it anything. God is not punishing us out of dislike or hatred, but of Creator's attitude to the created is always necessarily kind, benevolent. He is not wreaking any vengeance against us. Even the destruction of Rakshasas, Asuras, he killed them at a particular level of point of time so that they are prevented from condemning themselves further by committing more and more sin by living long. So the evil is cut. So let us remember one thing, the Creator is kind to us. He has given many tools to us to know our future, analyze our past and know the future. And now here we come to the present scenario of 2012 and the years that follow. Years that follow 2012 are definitely more significant, as many of our learned astrologers have expounded yesterday and the day before. Nothing very specific is seen on the midnight of 20th, 2012. Planetary, in the language of the planetary forces. So this way, how come 2012 has assumed such a great importance? Is it because of the Mayan prediction or coincidence of the Mayan periods with beginning of the Kali and end of that Mayan period? Now in 2012, hardly about 5,000 years have passed. Does it mean total destruction? It could be Yoga Sandhi. Yoga Sandhi not in the language of lakhs of years of the Puranic calculation, but there are periods and sub-periods and sub-sub-periods also in a man's Shukra Mahadasha, Shukra Antardasha, Shukra Vedasha, like that. Is it part of Antardasha of Kali, of the mankind? If that is so, we have a future. We have to have a future. God wants us to reform ourselves. God wants us to become wiser and wiser. Know more about yourself. Perhaps these are the lessons we are waiting for. If we have to become wiser, we have to live. If we have to become wiser, we must be taught a lesson. If we have to get a lesson taught to ourselves. It should be physical, mental, emotional, and every level of the human being must undergo a great change for the better. So that as though we have committed all the possible mistakes and nothing is left, perhaps that may be the time when we are in for a lesson. This much seems to be rather clear future in the near present current decade. From 2012 to 2020, these 8 years seem to be very significant. Now, I don't want to expatiate on my knowledge of astrology, which is very limited compared to any one of you, but I have some kind of feelings which I like to address. 2020, midnight again, or the December 21st, the solstice is going to be touched by the travel of the sun. The solar system is passing through. You have seen the Milky Way. At the center of the Milky Way, there is a bulge. The zodiac is cutting that a particular point on that bulge, which is at the center of the Milky Way. That's a very sensitive point of mutual cutting of two large circles, great circles. Every year the solar system, the sun is passing the solstice, but this time it appears that sun is passing very close, the closest point than ever before to that particular center. That is what they are calling the galactic center. That galactic center is going to give us many new experiences. Why? Our own planets are going to experience certain new things. Planet being what it is as an individuality is not behaving in the same fashion every day, every minute. Depends on the influences under which the planet is working. The place in the zodiac is exaltation, debilitation, aspects, conjunctions, and things so on. All these extraneous influences are working on the planet's behavior. Why? The planet has its own inherent nature in itself, subject to many influences also. The sum total of these forces on the planet is being experienced by us. So these planets are also undergoing a great change in the near future. And one more thing is, I always felt that the Jupiter and Saturnian conjunction at any particular point in the zodiac is leaving a certain force on that point of conjunction. These conjunctions are taking place 5 times in every century, and the next conjunction is retrograde on the zodiac, not forward. The points of conjunction, going by the case law of the past 19th century and all, we have seen great changes, unprecedented changes in the last century. There was a conjunction in the 1900, 1901, 1921. Between these 20 years, much water flowed under the bridge. Great dynasties who were taken to be the representation of the God himself, they were thrown out. Tsar of Russia was simply assassinated with his 5 children and his wife on the midnight of 16th, night intervening between 16th and 17th of 1918. If you examine these 2 conjunctions of 1901 and 1921, the evil forces that were triggered in 1901, they came into effect during the 20 years. many things happened. King George V, Wilhelm, Kaiser of Germany, and Tsar of Russia were first cousins. They belonged to the one same family. Two dynasties floundered, disappeared. George V was more fortunate to survive. They could not see. What happened to these brothers? Were they responsible for the first great world war? Who behaved in what manner? All that is part of the world's destiny. It influences a man to contribute to the ultimate result expected to be happening. All of us are working subconsciously together, consciously different, mentally opposing. But we are undergoing the same destiny totally. One good man is committing a mistake, bad man is also committing a mistake. For example, the Mahabharata war was brought about by cheating in an unholy dice game. Even knowing that Dharmaraja is prepared to pardon them, when his own wife, a woman of highly respected noble birth, is insulted in an open court of the king, a king who is supposed to punish such offender even if it takes place in a village, himself commits that serious sin. So the destiny was there, the die was cast. That was a part of the world's destiny. And who are the participants in this? There are learned Brahmins sitting in the court. The great grand man of Bhishma was also sitting there. They don't prevent it. They say they cannot prevent it. We have advised the king. What can we do? We are only courtiers. He is the ruler. After all, they are his sishyas or grandson or something like that. And they don't come forward to prevent it. They could have walked out like our opposition in the parliament. They could have taken an oath. Yes, if there is a war, we will not support you. But they didn't do so. Could you say that they are evil people? Are not very learned, weak in morals? Absolutely not. All of them are ideal characters. The worst ever thing has happened. In the following discussions in the Mahabharata, we find a continuous discussion between Draupadi and Yudhishthir. Yudhishthir says, pardoning an offense is the greatest merit of human being. Draupadi says, how can you ask me to pardon Duryodhana and Dushasana for the insult I have faced before a galaxy of learned elders? You want me to forget all that? It's not possible for me. I must see the blood of that offender. Still he argues, yes, I can understand your feelings of hurt, but the greatest virtue is to pardon. So simultaneously, the ordinary human being, the ideal human being who can ignore all that is happening on the earth in the name of Dharma. He was talking of the Paramadharma. Draupadi and you and I would always talk of the Ardha Sadhana Dharma. Our Dharma requires the criminal to be punished in the interest of the society. The law does not ask us to punish the offender. Suppose somebody offends you, can I pardon that? You are the offended person. Dharmaraja is able to pardon all the Kauravas, but not Draupadi. Perhaps the misplacement of that grand view, a philosophical attitude towards a criminal, was confined only to Yudhishthir and perhaps misdirected. We can say that. The other day, it was in the news, worst murderers who butchered families were sentenced to death. All the three courts. The president pardoned them. Can this society be happy about it? What are the reasons for pardoning them? Yes, there was a condition, there is a condition that can win a pardon to a man if only he regrets it. A man should regret his crime. Sir, I am guilty. I regret. I am prepared to be given any punishment. I will take the punishment. Then he may deserve pardon because he is a changed man. Like Buddha pardoned a criminal who had killed 99 people, he came to kill the 100th man who was Buddha according to him. Cut their thumbs, wear all the thumbs as a mala. Buddha told him, why are you doing this? In a few exchange of words, that Angulimala was changed. There was no criminal anymore in him. So he deserved the pardon. An unconverted, unchanged criminal, can he deserve pardon? The basic question. So great principles that Arjuna was given, or Yudhishthir had taught Draupadi, are still being used in this country, maybe for the wrong purpose, wrong place, wrong context. Dharma lives on, but the right application of the Dharma is more important than the Dharma itself being present in the society. There are great sages, learned men, moralists, sannyasis, viragis, scholars in Vedas and sciences. Thousands of them are available here. The entire society need not be learned. The degree of Dharma is to be understood as having a reference to the learned man, highly placed man, the rich man, powerful man, who is other name of it is a Brahmana. Learning, position, wealth, power of mind and body, so can vicious the Dharma. It is misplaced Dharma. Dharma still continues, not exactly well applied. This is our history today. This Kali Yuga started with that unpardonable crime of insulting a woman, member of the royal family, and before that a Rajasuya Yajna was there, and Draupadi took Avabhrata Snanam, highly purified being. People have to say pranam to her after the Rajasuya Yajna. She was insulted. The Brahmins don't prevent it. The Kshatriyas don't prevent it. The king is free to indulge in any kind of mad crimes. That's the beginning of Kali. So, having started that, our story has started that with that incident. And Bhishma speaks of all the dharmas when he was lying on the bed of arrows for 49 nights. His grandson, his own grandson, Dharmaraja says, Tata, we have brought this state to you due to our I am responsible for your lying down like this on the bed of arrows, suffering a pain. And yet I would like to know many things about Dharma from you. And if you carefully read that Bhishma Param, you will see when every question has been answered, not in his own, on his own, within in his own language. Bhishma says, this question was put by so and so to so one. That man answered this question like this. I will repeat it. He doesn't speak on his own authority because he doesn't consider himself as an authority on Dharma. There is humility, there is a regret, there is an inherent sense of Dharma in him. Having witnessed this Dushta Karma, can I teach Dharma to the people? I will only quote others. Not only that, they are clever also. They fought on the side of Kauravas, welcoming their own destruction, while looking at the Lord Oh yes, we will be looking at the Lord, the Jagat Guru, Trilokya Guru, Sri Mahavishnu's Amsha, Sri Krishna. Then we will die a noble death where all our sins are washed. A kind of a clever attitude. That is where our story started. And that Kali perhaps is reaching a very important milestone so that we will become aware of what went wrong, how much of that unholy incident is shared by us consciously, and we think we are competent to criticize Rama, criticize great personalities in the Puranas. There are intellectuals today accusing Rama of sending away his wife unkindly when she is pregnant to the forest without notice and things like that. But the basic question is, did Sita complain? Why are these people worried about it? Sita said what Rama did was correct. She told her boys, the love and kush. Then they asked, Mommy, we heard the story of some king called Rama. It seems he has sent away his mother, pregnant wife to the. How can a noble king, noble husband, desert or send away his wife to the forest without even telling her? Is it not adharma? No. What he did is dharma. He is the incarnate dharma. It's not easy to understand him. Accept it as absolute truth. What kind of a person who is supposed to complain has not complained, and people like me are complaining about it, as though we know all about it. And what is the qualification of these people who are talking about Rama? Did they ever maintain total truthfulness in thought, word and deed for 24 hours in life? And they are complaining. So we have drifted away and away to a long distance from the standards of dharma. And vulgar display of wealth. Somebody tells me, shows me around his house, Guru Garu, this is a bathroom that has cost me 25 lakhs. I imported all the marble from Italy and Germany also. The architects also, bathroom architect. He has come. I paid 5 lakhs for this design. And I said, your bathroom is very great. It is bedroom attached bathroom. And I don't understand this vulgar display of wealth, because he doesn't know what to do with his money. Money is just lying in tons, suitcases. 100 yards away, there's a poor man in the hut who is drenching himself in the rain. He has no food. He doesn't have even 5 rupees in his pocket. There's nothing in his. And he is one of the laborers who worked on this construction. 100 yards away, not even pinch is felt about the surrounding poverty. So that is exactly where he might say, yes, this is all the money that I have earned in my own business. I have earned this money, I have a right to enjoy it. But it's not so. A man has no right to enjoy it as long as it is denied to those people in need. That is standard. So this kind of upstart thinking, and well, there is in India much too much money that never existed in the history of India exists today. Money is the blood of the nation. It has to keep flowing. Otherwise there is sclerosis, obstruction of the blood. If it happens near the heart, a man dies. It happens anywhere in the brain, because loses his consciousness. So this is a kind of adharma that is prevalent in a country like India. And where is this adharma? In the upper classes of society. Don't bother about caste and this thing. Upper class is all one, class is different caste. Upper caste was supposed to be the uppermost class, not necessarily. We always have the stories in the Puranas. There lived an old learned Brahmin, but too poor to feed his children. Poverty was not complained about. It was others to take care of him. So there were so many things happening. So ultimately I would like to say, if anybody on the earth has to be reminded about Dharma, it's the Indian first. Indian is the Guru of the whole world. The Guru must be cleansed, Guru must become purified, he should take his holy bath and then start teaching. There's plenty of knowledge, scriptural knowledge, practical knowledge among many people. Maybe they are not more than 10,000 in 80 crores of Hindus. But that message has to be given. It must spread into the common people. Rather than punishing the poor criminal, Krishna saw to it Duryodhana survived all the family members, his gurus, his courtiers and all that. That was his punishment. He continued to live. He did not die during the course of war. And ultimately, the son of the Guru, Ashwathama, commits the most heinous crime, killing the sleeping people in their bed. So, the top class has to become self-aware, look at themselves in the mirror of conscience and make a judgment about themselves, even before others point out. Then I think we are in for such a message, such a treatment, shock therapy, whatever it is. After all is said and done, the end of Dwapara Yuga, it did not wipe out the entire population. Population that didn't deserve to live, perhaps, including the Yadavas. Yadavas were in a diaspora. They did not have their own kingdom. They were serving everywhere. Agriculturists or this or that, or a soldier. Krishna founded a kingdom for this sake. Dwarka was the ancient city that was lying in ruins, was refurbished, reconstructed, made an excellent city. He made his brother a king. We always think of Krishna as playing the flute and playing with the girls. That's not his personality. That is a very misleading exterior of Krishna. He was the hardest man. No consideration when somebody has to be finished. At the age of 1.5 years, as an infant, he sucked the life out of an evil woman. Right from the day, he did not waste an year, a minute, to perform to discharge the responsibilities to the world. Very, very hard man, merciless man when punishment is concerned. But rather than presenting him in that personality, we have been habituated to think of him as a sweet Makhan Chor. That's not the main role that he has to play. It's different. He is the Jagat Guru, Triloki Guru. Let us remember his message and try to understand where we stand, what is our responsibility. It is from 2012, perhaps to 2020 and beyond. The age is an age of changes. We have to take a U-turn from our system of our values and our sense of responsibilities, and we have to understand where are we, what are we to do, with reference to the standards of morality. And I can go on like this, wasting your time endlessly. I am only pouring out my feeling to unburden myself, not to educate you, please remember. Professor K.N. Rao Garu has analyzed the chart of India. Well, every one of you, scholars who have come from a distance, deserve to be given much more time also, I am aware. But the physical limitations. You could not do more than this. I thank all the scholars. Gratefully, I am submitting my thanks to them for having taken the trouble to come over and give their best message for the benefit of the local people and myself. Perhaps this is not the last word that these great scholars are giving. They will continue to think about it. They will give their further readings and messages in the future, maybe 6 months later, 9 months later. There is no harm again conducting a series of meetings, if we can, whenever and wherever we can afford it, in any manner that we can afford it. I request all the great scholars to continue, think right, enlighten us. Thank you very much. Namaskar.